Greetings from Baku, Dr. Corbin. Firstly, thank you for your time. It's a great pleasure to discuss with you such important issues in the decolonization field. You are so popular, you are high-skilled and experienced expert in decolonization, and today we would like to ask some questions regarding the after Bougival Accord in Kanaki and in other overseas territories.
Well, first of all, it's great to see you again, and thank you for the kind words. Please give all of your great staff my best regards as we proceed, and be a very interesting development which have taken place not only in Kanaki but in other territories as well. And I'll be very happy to discuss it to the extent that I seek to follow these matters, particularly now in advance of the Fourth Committee of the United Nations, which begins in a few weeks' time after the general debate of the General Assembly.
Thank you. I would like to start our discussion with my first question, with your permission. And Matignon Accord, Noumea Accord, and Bougival Agreement. Did these agreements barriers on the decolonization process of Kanaki and other overseas territories? What's your opinion?
Well, I think in all of those cases, you find that it's been a lengthy process. One of the first things that I have always looked at is how long the projection is for the end result to come. Matignon Accord as well as the Noumea Accords were also very lengthy periods, and the projected period for the newest proposal, because it is still a proposal, that is also a very lengthy period as well. So it's something which some of my colleagues have expressed the view that this is essentially has been a delaying tactic to proceed while not really agreeing to the final result, which being that of sovereignty. So this is a complex issue. Obviously, as you are aware, there are many factors. There are many players, if you will, around the table with different views on how to proceed. From judging from the recent developments, you have initially there was the document put forth that was more attuned to a free association arrangement, but that was not agreed by one of the players. So there was then a rewrite of that, perhaps a new. I'm not certain if it was a rewrite or a new proposal which came out, which of course is what we are dealing with now. And after the discussions in France on that issue, then the discussions took place in Kanaki, and we know from that there's been some issues that have resulted in the failure to agree to the document, both in the case of the largest party, as well as the customary Senate as well, which has indicated their opposition to it.
But we mentioned a lot of postponed issues, a lot of significant matters which postponed by French government. What's your opinion about these postponed issues?
Well, I think the document that is in question does in fact have a very a lot of there's a procedure that is put in place if that procedure goes forward, and I think despite the opposition, it appears as though France wishes to push this document forward. Now, of course, what is happening in France now politically it has caused some concerns as to whether or not the new prime minister, for example, would be in a position to ensure that this document continues, or whether there'll be a delay because there's a very short timetable with respect to the approvals on this. But it will be very difficult, in my view, for it to be adopted if, in fact, the FNLKS is not on board, or indeed the customary center is not on board. So this is a position that we are in. I know I'm sure, discussions underway in Kanaki and various places. That certainly the Pacific Islands Forum is meeting presently in Solomon Islands, and the item is one of the issues on their agenda. And one of the issues particularly is the delayed report, really, of the Pacific Islands Forum mission to Kanaki following the what we refer to as internal unrest with respect to the result of the many factors. And of course, the report, and I was reading just this morning, there's a press report indicating that there was some concerns expressed by the French government, that, or representative in the Pacific, that there were some issues that were contained in the report that they wanted to be modified, and also the issue of the proposal be reflected in the document. So those issues are being discussed as we speak, and we'll see what ultimately comes out of the final communique of the Pacific Islands Forum, and that I think will give us some indication of what will be discussed, perhaps even at the Fourth Committee, or even in the margins of the Fourth Committee, because, of course, as you know, the UN Fourth Committee will meet with the item of the New Caledonia on its agenda, and there will also be, there in fact is a resolution from the Special Committee on Decolonization, which occurred in June, where their meeting was held during the regular session, and the meeting was approved a resolution on New Caledonia, as well as the other 16 territories on the United Nations list of non-self-governing territories. Now, the resolution on New Caledonia does not reflect some of these developments, because these developments had not occurred yet. So now we'll see how this is going to transpire in the Fourth Committee. So we'll be watching that very, very closely.
But what do you think? For example, Noumea Accord, it took more than 25 years for implementation. Is it so long time for you, or it's normal in the concession process?
I am not a fan of these long periods because much can occur in such a long period of time. 10 to 15-year period, I think, is what is being discussed even for the present proposal. What is the end result? It's unclear what the intention is. But I think that these long periods are just essentially too long, in my view. That's my personal view. Because you do have these developments that occur in that intervening period. Political developments, changes of government, both at the administrative power level as well as in the territory itself. And even within this framework, there was a change of government in Kanaki. The president changed from the FNLKS to the other pro-French party. So you have those kind of dynamics which have an impact on the pace of development of the political evolution. And particularly when you're talking about sovereignty, we're talking, and one side is steadfastly against sovereignty. So the question is, it's a very complex one.
Okay, great, thank you. And okay, what do you think about as well known, the Bougival Accord, the Bougival Agreement, signed in July by representatives of French government and New Caledonia, with some representatives signed this agreement. And in August, they rejected by FNLKS this accord. And what do you think about this rejection of Bougival Accord by Kanak people, because we absorbed a lot of reactions from other overseas territories. But I'm interested in your opinion on rejection by Kanak people of this Bougival Accord.
Well, I think the statements, the public statements, the official statements that were released by the FNLKS were very clear as to what the reasons why they rejected them. And of course, there are numerous reasons, but much of it has to do with the fact that the issue of sovereignty was not clear. And I think you have some indication in some of the players, the parties, that the sovereignty would be a gradual process. Others, I think the majority part of the FNLKS grouping, according to the reports, were much more inclined to proceed toward sovereignty much more immediately. And I think that is really the fundamental question. At the same time, you have, of course, those who do not wish to have sovereignty at all. And I think there are some developments that have been put in place in the document, such as a nationality, a New Caledonian nationality, and dual citizenship, these kinds of things, as well as some things related to international relations, which, of course, in the fine print appears to reflect international relations, but must be in conformity with French foreign policy. So if that is the case, then there's a conditionality related to that. So it's a very complex document. I assume that they're seeking to put some issues in, some modifications to it along the way, but recognizing that the two main parties, I think, the two main players, if you will, FNLKS and Customary Senate, have been clear that they're not in favor of the document because of those and other reasons. So I think that's.
Yeah, I'm sorry for interruption, but how do you evaluate this action by Kanak people? I mean, rejection. How do you evaluate directly the rejection?
Well, I think it's their expression of their position, and given the fact that their fundamental goal is sovereignty and decolonization process, and they are coming, as I understand from the media, in this case, is that they will have their own proposal that will be be presented or released sometime this month in September. So okay. That will give you some indication, and give us all some indication of what it is that they would like to see and the process that they would like to follow. And I think much of it relates to the role of the United Nations. And this is a very important point, because in fact the proposal, as I've read, does not indicate a role in this regard, to the extent that they would like to see. So, and even in the case of French Polynesia, French Polynesia has been particularly interested in a United Nations role. It is, in fact, something that has been expressed both by the president of Maui Nui, French Polynesia, and also by the president of the Assembly of French Polynesia. All have asked for a clear United Nations role, because it's very difficult to negotiate with the other side, with the entity on the other side of the table having full power over you. You know, it's kind of sort of a difficult, uneven situation. So to have a neutral arbiter, if you will, is something that I think would be in everyone's best interest, certainly in the case of Maui Nui. And this is what has been expressed repeatedly, including in the resolution of Maui Nui, of the General Assembly, which has indicated that the government and the people of the territory have expressed the view that they would like a role of the United Nations very, very clearly. And that goes into what we have had finally placed in the resolution after a number of years of requests, that for a constructive program of work on decolonization, which would ultimately end with well, certainly would include a very strong United Nations role in the discussion and in the public education and in the whole issue of heightening the awareness of the people of the options available to them, and ultimately ending up in a United Nations sponsored referendum. And of course, this is something which has been adopted by the UN General Assembly from actually the 1990s, and we are seeking to operationalize it because it is a roadmap, if you will. It is a roadmap. The roadmap exists, and for all of these territories, all 17 of them, of us, since I am from one of them, the U.S. Virgin Islands, which is also on that list, and there's a roadmap for all of us. It's there. Though there are only a few who are aware of the roadmap, and there are only a few who have even fewer number, who have asked for this roadmap to be operationalized for them. And I think the very first one is Maui Nui.
Great, thank you. You several times mentioned about the United Nations, and from an international perspective, does France's approach align with or violate United Nations decolonization principles? Approach, I mean, for example, above mentioned agreements. It's a methods of French government. What do you think? It's align with or violate United Nations principles?
Well, I think it's uneven. In the case of Maui Nui, for example, the territory was reinscribed in 2013. As a result, the reinscription then required the administering power to provide information to the United Nations under Article 73E of the Charter on an annual basis. The administering power has never provided information. It simply refuses to do so, and it refuses to accept the fact that it was reinscribed, the territory was reinscribed in 2013 by a consensus resolution of the United Nations General Assembly. So at that point, that's a violation of not a resolution where there's, people who argue that resolutions are non-binding, or they're non-binding when they're not in their interest. They're binding when they are in their interest. So that's another story. But you have a situation where this is a violation of the Charter of the United Nations. And of course, the other part of that, there are several, 73A through E, but 73B is very important as well, which it requires the administering power to advance the territory to full self-government. And that has, of course, not been done for Maui Nui at all. Now, if you look at the case of Kanaki, for example, there has been consistent participation of the United Nations in their processes. One can question how effective they have been. There have been numerous visiting missions and so on to the territory to examine. There have been, of course, the 3 referenda under the Nouméa Accord, where the United Nations was involved, at least in an observer capacity. I believe, in fact, there was even United Nations assistance from the electoral division in terms of registration of the electorate and so on. And there have been a number of reports in that regard coming out of the UN. But the issue is, at this stage, their involvement at this point is unclear. I think we will know more about that perhaps at the 4th committee, and even going into the next year when the Special Committee on Decolonization meets in February of next year. But of course, the timetable for this proposal would have had a number of developments taking place prior to that time. So it's a very interesting and fluid situation, as we say, and we have to watch it very carefully.
Thank you, Doctor. As you know, we presented to the United Nations Human Rights Committee in October session of 2024 alternative report regarding the violations in New Caledonia and French Polynesia. And we delivered statements by Baku Initiative Group's representatives, also by representatives of overseas territories. But unfortunately, we couldn't get any crucial attempts or crucial actions from UN institutions regarding the current situation in Kanaki and Mahonui. Maybe some mechanisms are outdated. I couldn't say you're expert in this field, but anyway, we will wait some crucial reactions from United Nations and other related intergovernmental organizations. And I'm sure that
I would say at this stage that the involvement with the Human Rights Committee is a very excellent move. Both the ruling party in Maui Nui was also very active, made a very strong presentation at that session, and as you know, the result was a recommendation from the Human Rights Committee calling upon the administering power to actually engage the Special Committee on Decolonization in order to facilitate the decolonization of the territory. Now, because in fact this has been requested by the General Assembly since 2013, but it's been ignored. Now it's now coming from another body of the United Nations. So these are all very important factors. This kind of recognition that they're essentially ignoring international law, and that is something which it must be pointed out at every opportunity.
Sure. And I'm sure that you got information from news about the escalations in France, in Paris, in Marseille, and in other cities. And what's your opinion on impact of these escalations in France to overseas territories?
Well, I think I assume you're referring to the political developments, and that's something which is internal to France. Obviously, it has an impact on the amount of time, energy, and focus they would have on the territories themselves, generally speaking. But I think they have a particular line which they will continue with respect to some. But in the case of Kanaki, it's much more complex because of the situation is moving forward in the way that it is moving. But yes, it's something that one has to watch very carefully to see what there's a new prime minister. Whether or not his ability to put forth a budget which will be adopted ultimately is still a matter to be seen. And so all these factors are going to be particularly important as we move forward. And at the same time, the territories, particularly Maui Nui, is not waiting for those processes to continue. They're moving forward toward a process. They have created within the Assembly of French Polynesia a special commission on decolonization, which is focused on implementation of the mandate at the territorial level of decolonization, particularly with respect to the education of the population, awareness raising of the whole process of self-determination leading to decolonization. And I think this is something that there's a role for the United Nations to do this because it is actually a mandate of the General Assembly. But there's also a role for the institutions within the territories themselves to actually engage the people, and they're able to bring the people to a higher level of awareness so that they know what is available to them and the options. And I must point out that the options would be the genuine options as opposed to options which are effectively colonial modernization. One can modernize the colony, but it's still a colony, right? But so there are minimum standards, and which we use, in fact. We use those minimum standards in our self-governance assessments, which we've done for Maui Nui. We did a recent 10-year review of that. We have done those in Dutch territories, British territories, and French territories. So to actually examine the particular status of their territory, the state of play, the power relationship between the ministering power and the territory, among other factors. And of course, you may know, as we speak, developments in my region in the Caribbean that are impacting the region as a whole, and the issues of military activities and so forth. There are resolutions in the UN, for example, that address that. Whether or not they're adhered to is another factor. But the idea that territories have these relationships which they're unable to determine what applies to them and what does not, and so that at the same time those arrangements are projected as self-government. So I think there's a clear importance to be able to understand the minimum standards of self-government, and this is what we have put together in terms of our assessments. We're hopefully beginning one in this fall on one of the Dutch territories. That will be a 5-year review of what has occurred there. We did one 5 years ago, and what has occurred in 5 years is very striking.
So from your words, somehow we can evaluate the rejection by Kanak people, the Bougival Agreement. We can evaluate as positive impact on decolonization. What's your humble opinion?
Well, I don't know if it's an impact. I mean, their situation it goes back quite a bit, quite a long way, and I think this is just the latest reiteration of their position. They have had a number of successes along the way. They have had a number of things that have been obstacles.
I'm sorry, can we say that it was a success action by Kanaks?
Well, I think that along the way you have a number of issues that have been considered success. I mean, you had the process aspects of the Noumea Accord would be considered successful. But at the same time, when there was an opportunity to perhaps manipulate that it happened, and I particularly refer to the third referendum, which.
So we can say they avoid the barrier, they remove the barrier on the decolonization process.
Well, I think there was a concern that the third referendum would have gone above 50% for independence, and since you know the numbers as well, that the percentage of participation was below 50%, and the numbers of people who voted against independence were far fewer than the previous referendum, the second referendum. So at the same time, given the fact that there was a boycott, then you had a very high percentage voting in favor of essentially voting against independence. However, the result did not necessarily reflect the electorate because of the boycott. So yet at the same time, this is projected internationally as the third referendum. There were 3 referenda, and all 3 stated that they were against independence, but it doesn't show the full picture. And this is part of the way in which there's manipulation takes place. And it's not just manipulation in the process, but also in terms of how it is projected and how it is perceived by those who are reading certain documents, certain reports, certain analyses. So this is always an issue. And of course, in the United Nations context, there's a bit of a disappointment with respect to the several resolutions that have occurred in the past, which don't really give a true picture as to the what occurred in that third referendum. It's very sketchy in terms of the kind of there's not enough emphasis on the reason why the result was the way it was. So these are some of the issues that we look at quite often, and we see this playing out in the United Nations quite a bit.
So we can evaluate that Kanak people's chances to get independency increased or decreased. What do you think? By rejection of such accords?
Well, I'm not sure what the chances are increased or decreased. I think that this is there was a proposal. It was put on the table. It was rejected, and now there's going to be a counter proposal. So perhaps you could see it in the context of a continual discussion, but at the same time, we see that even with the rejection, there's this tendency to want to push this thing forward, regardless. So that's another factor. So these are issues that will be and are being, I'm sure, addressed within Kanaki, within the various parties under the umbrella of the FNLKS and other parties as well, and we will see the extent. I'm sure that there's some discussions, as I said earlier, in the forum, Pacific Islands Forum. There will be discussions certainly at the Fourth Committee of the UN. So we'll have a much better picture. We follow the events, follow developments. There are a few persons who follow this very closely and report on it and analyze it, and I follow their work very closely because, in fact, they keep me informed as to some of the developments that are very important to the future of this movement.
Our time will show us outcomes of these updates in the conservation field. Yeah, Doctor, first is again, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing with us your thoughts and opinion on last updates after rejection of Bougival Agreement. On behalf of Baku Initiative Group, we highly appreciate your contribution to the conservation process as high skilled and experienced expert. Thank you again for your time. And with great pleasure, me and Elgun were inviting you to our side event during the General Assembly. It will be on September 25 at 10 a.m. On conference room 7. It's a popular conference room for you.
Indeed, yes. Well, I appreciate that very much. Thank you for the kind invitation to participate in that. Thank you also for the kind words. Someone said the expert is what someone else calls you. I never call myself that, but I allow you to call me that, I suppose. But it must also have to do something with the time put into this issue, which relates not only to our territories in the Caribbean and the Pacific, and also, as we know, in the Indian Ocean. And I must commend the Baku Initiative Group for its work in raising the level of awareness of Mayotte Reunion, which is something and Guyana, for example, which these are situations where we are not nearly as aware of those initiatives and those situations and the developments in those territories. I think it's very important for that to be exposed to the global community, and because this is the colonization is not over, it is just becoming increasingly complex, and then we have to of course continue to follow it, and we will of course continue to do that. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you again, and take care. Hope to see you soon.
All the best.
Thank you. All the best. Take care. Bye, Doctor. Bye.